Ladies and gentlemen, Kwibin Yorobun, thank you all for joining us for this webinar that will focus on the joint security area in Panmunjom, but also more specifically and more precisely on the axe murder incident of 1976. In that incident, a group of North Koreans jumped a group of Americans and Koreans who were simply doing their duty to trim a tree. And as you will hear, the tension had built up for some period of time and spilled over into a violent attack initiated by the North Koreans and ultimately resulting in the death of Arthur Bonifas, then a captain, and Mark Barrett, then a lieutenant. These two leaders were standing with their troops, causing the mission to be accomplished, but that mission was interrupted. You know, I first heard the story of this incident in 1976. As it turned out, Arthur Bonifas had gone to Korea from his assignment at West Point, where he was a faculty member, and his family was still there waiting for him to return in just a matter of weeks. I entered West Point in that same summer and remember very vividly standing in an honor guard on the plane at West Point as the body of Arthur Bonifas was returned to his family. And we stood there and saluted as he passed by. And I remember that as perhaps the first memorial event I ever participated in as a person under arms. And so that shaped my memory and etched into my mind this place called the JSA. A few years later, when I was serving as a company commander myself during the Cold War in Germany, my battalion commander, then Lieutenant Colonel Ed Sheeran, had these wood blocks made of poplar wood in his office and axe handles, or mattock handles, I should say more precisely, mattock handles that he had posted in his office. And I asked him, what's the story behind this, as I was his battalion adjutant and he was the commander. And he explained to me that he had been on the ground when that happened. In fact, he was the replacement for Arthur Bonifas, and they were doing a joint inventory. And within a matter of days, he led the element to come and cut the tree down completely. And those segments of poplar were from the actual tree at Panmunjom near the Bridge of No Return. That etched even further into my mind the significance and the human story that is behind what happened in the joint security area on that fateful day. My third encounter with the joint security area was being a battalion commander in Korea, this time in Tonggucheon at Camp Casey. And while we were not posted on the DMZ, we frequently visited the DMZ and provided security behind the joint security area in case something happened to that last American element that was still on the DMZ. It's the United Nations Command Security Battalion in the joint security area, the same unit that Arthur Bonifas had been part of. And I visited the JSA many times and finally was able to see the location of that tree with my own eyes and to stand at it, right at the edge of the Bridge of No Return, and to feel the unique environment of the joint security area. It wasn't like any other part of the demilitarized zone. There is no fence. There's no separation. There's no 2-kilometer standoff except for the fact that it is inside of the 2-kilometer standoff that is otherwise known as a demilitarized zone. It's a unique area. And I could feel the tension inside of there as one side watched the other constantly. And that had changed fundamentally since 1976 when this incident occurred. Prior to that time, people could move around together and interact with one another in generally a friendly and negotiating way. But that ended in 1976 with the murder of Arthur Bonifas and Mark Barrett. Finally, my time as the commander of U.S. forces in Korea, and with it, the commander of United Nations Command, that had responsibility for that same small area, the same joint security area that had been so important to the creation of the armistice and remained important through the preservation of it. And on many occasions, I visited or I brought dignitaries who wanted to see it for themselves. And indeed, toward the end of that time, we were able to change the conditions and lower the risk such that we could reduce our security in there one more time, almost to the levels that they were in 1976. It was a risky decision. It continues to hold, as we'll hear during this discussion today. But it makes one wonder, will there ever be a time where North Korea and South Korea can be in peace? The armistice itself, which is preserved by those like Arthur Bonifas and Mark Barrett and the soldiers who were with them, US and Korean, that armistice was supposed to be a temporary measure until lasting peace could occur. That was the expectation when the document was signed by General Mark Clark in 1953. Where are we today? Well, let's find out. Let's remember those who sacrificed in such a significant way there in the Joint Security Area, and their symbolism for all defense veterans from the United States and South Korea who have stood the watch during their time in Korea to make sure that war does not resume. Thank you once again for joining us. For those of you who are new to the Korea Defense Veterans Association, this is what we do. We honor those who served in the defense of Korea and who continue to serve in harm's way in the defense of Korea. And we support and strengthen the Korea-US alliance, which remains critically important to the United States of America and to the Republic of Korea. Please join us. Thank you for joining us for this webinar, and we look forward to your feedback after this is over.